Critics Log 41-872. Following our voyage back from the summer blockbusters, the Star Trek YouTuber has picked up 29 new subscribers on the crew. This is good for us. However, we have now entered a new problem. We made an unscheduled stop at Paramount Plus. We had unheard of this television show, a show by the name of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. The review was not originally in our plan. After several viewings, in-depth analysis, and careful consideration for character, special effects, visual storytelling, basic storytelling, character motivation, and much more, I feel pressed upon, and I feel it my necessity, as well as my duty as the captain of this channel, to review it. This is no small undertaking for this crew. We've been through much. Also considering the fact that I've reviewed Star Wars makes me very conflicted in how people will regard this. No matter what though, I must take this critically acclaimed series and put my mark on it. With that said, I got ready, sat in the chair of the captain. And with that said, told Scotty and everyone else, let's get the lights back. Star Trek Strange New Worlds is the latest addition to this new universe of Star Trek we have coming out, and Season 1 has finally wrapped up after premiering for what seemed like a very short time, even though it was a total of 10 episodes. The series chronicles the early adventures of Captain Pike, along with his Lieutenant Mr. Spock and the rest of his crew, as they are now out for Starfleet, they are working for Star Command, they are for the Federation of Planets, and they are doing, as the title would imply, discovering strange new worlds. Along the way, they get into adventures, they make discoveries, and there is commentary, and there's lots of action and brilliant characters as in any Star Trek project. I actually originally had no plans to review the show. Matter of fact, I found about the show very late. I found out it was actually on when episode 8 had finally come out. So I had to quick go back, try to rewatch all the episodes, get all the way down to the season finale, and at first I wasn't planning on talking about it either, but after it wrapped up, I think I do have thoughts in the series. I have things I want to say, both good and bad. I will say this show has had an overwhelmingly positive reception. It currently sits at 99% on Rotten Tomatoes as of me recording this video. It has been acclaimed everywhere. Trek fans, even if you're not a Trek fan, this thing has been raved on. However, I think there are some issues with this that I see that, for me, took away from my overall viewing experience. But at the same time, there are things that I really, really love about this show. Easy to know the show is very closely connected to Discovery and all the other ones that have been in this new universe, and I think the way they play out is very well. They did a very good job, I believe, of trying to connect things, but also trying to respect the old and do the new. Sometimes fails, sometimes works, so let's get into talking about this thing. Anson Mount as Captain Pike, he is very good in this role. I think he delivers a very grounded and very chilling performance. He has some things, I'm not going to spoil anything in this review, I'm talking about spoiler, but he has some things that his character knows of and has to go through that I think he plays very well. He brings a lot of weight to this role, and he brings back that classic captain style that I think we haven't seen in a while. That very by-the-books, almost 60s-ish style, and that is because that show is trying to mimic that. This show tries to look similar to the old ones, and I think he does a good job at encapsulating that. He really brings to life. He really makes it feel like it has that same classic energy that we haven't had in so long. Usually we have that more modern approach. Not that I'm objected to it, but it is nice to see that happen. His character, they did some good things with it, and they do explain some things, and they give more backstory to a character that really wasn't given much in the original series, and I have absolutely no problems with that. Peck as Mr. Spock is good. I think he is very, very good. I don't think he's as good as the ones in the J.J. Abrams series, but I think he still really does a good stand-up performance. He delivers his own version of Spock. He's not doing an imitation of Leonard Nimoy as much as I think he's more or less emoting him. He's emoting those emotions that necessarily Leonard Nimoy would probably give, but still being himself in the role, and he delivers a good performance. He has a lot of things. Again, there's an interesting thing that has to do with Spock and his character and his emotions and his feelings in here that ties into the original series that is expanded upon, and he's given detail and a character, and I enjoyed it. Everything involving his character was phenomenal. I think they did a good job of handling it, and he had those Spock moments where he kind of cracks a little bit. Bush, she just might be my favorite character in this whole show. I love what they did with her. She manages to be funny, dramatic, interesting, strange, so many things at once, and she's got probably some of my favorite scenes starting from the first episode, and I loved that character so much. Again, something that's developed on This series, I will say right now, develops on so many characters so very well. I think all the performances in here are excellent. No one does a bad job. Everyone gives top notch. The villains, very good. Particularly, I'd say the episode 2, 10, and 7 were probably my favorite villains. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything because I think you should go into the show and just watch it and make it for your own viewing experience. I think everyone in here, like I said, acts wonderfully. All the characters are very well written, very well played out. I am going to get into now more about the series and just how I feel about, in general, the storytelling, the special effects, everything like that. The show actually takes a lot of ideas from the original. It expands on ideas, as I've been saying, but more than that, it will take something and develop it, or something that was mentioned in passing, and build on it. They also have a lot of new ideas, and it is such a good blend of old and new, I think, and it does it so very well that it feels refreshing, new, but familiar and old at the exact same time. It's something I feel like they can kind of, I guess, pander to every audience who really wants to sit down and watch this. Now, I think that something that does stand out to me is the special effects. I think they're not very good in the show. I think they could be better. Sometimes a little video game-ish, but that's what I come to expect. It's not necessarily going to be as good as Discovery, but the special effects sometimes were a little, The dialogue at times could be a little janky, but overall is usually very well written. I think the strongest point of this show is the characters and their interactions with each other and their development. That is pretty much what drives the show. And I think that's superb and perfect. Because that's what Star Trek should be. Star Trek should not be flashy. It's not meant to be showy. It is about characters. And if those characters can drive your episode, then you have a good show. The Next Generation, I think, is the best example of this. Next Generation rarely had some action-packed, booming episode. It usually was something very political, or what we considered boring television. But because you care about the characters, and the characters were so investing, you actually cared about what was going on in it. Think about the movie that's considered the best Star Trek movie, probably of all time, by most fans. Star Trek The Wrath of Khan. Though there's action in it, it is primarily a lot of talking. But because we are invested in these characters, we care. This show takes the time to do the exact same thing. It makes you invested in these people. The storytelling, I think, is where it can bounce back and forth. At times, I think there are really good ideas at play. I think that episode 2 and 3 have some really good, very deep, messages, and I really liked them. There's one with this binary thing that I think was very good in the show as well. They had some very good episodes. The pilot, I think, is by far the weakest of the entire show. It felt a little bit too much like a pilot, if that makes sense, and I didn't like that. The show is more mature, also something I like. It isn't very afraid to step forward and make things happen that you wouldn't think would happen normally in a Star Trek show, because I'm all for that, and I want more mature stories in my shows. I don't want to be watching something that's written like it came out in 1955 when I'm in the year 2022. One problem I have is the way they go about their messages. Now, anyone who knows Star Trek knows Star Trek is meant to send a message. It is meant to make statements about the era and the time we are in. Sometimes this show nails it. Sometimes it does a phenomenal job. Like the binary episode, I think that message was delivered with such crystal clear perfection and fairness that I couldn't have done it better. And I admire that episode, and it stands out as one of my favorites. However, again, going back to the pilot, the way they go about trying to explain right and wrong doesn't work for me. Because Pike almost comes across as the white savior, the way they go about doing it, and it doesn't feel right. And I feel like they almost dumb down a society to our problems, and it doesn't land correctly, and it doesn't necessarily make everyone fair or offer a solution. I think that's the problem with the show, is the show does have trouble sometimes with how to make the crew not seem like they're condescending when they're sending these messages, and to seem like they're unbiased and they're fair. And though the show tries very hard, it fails oftentimes, and that's something that I struggled with sometimes watching it. However, that is not to say that it's bad. The show still, I think, does very well. I think sometimes the use of comedy can be wrong and a little forced at moments when there should not be so much levity. But that's a rare occasion. Usually the show manages to convey everything with drama, well-written dialogue, excellent sequences, and gorgeous, jaw-dropping scenery. The fact that a lot of this is also shot on location and not always on a green screen, I think also helps to make this look even better. And the fact they're on sets kind of resembles the old show. I love the way they pay homage to the old and they can bring in the new. There are some things that happen, especially the final episode, that I think if you're a Trek fan, you'll be very excited about, but you could be torn on. So I don't want to say any more about that. With that said, it's time for me to rate this show after I give you my final thoughts briefly. essentially, I think this show has its flaws. It makes mistakes, and not everything is perfect. However, it is a great return to the original, and it brings in new and old ideas to combine them together to do an enjoyable Star Trek watch. I'm going to give Star Trek Strange New Worlds an 8 out of 10. So thank you guys, as always, so much for watching. I appreciate you, and I will see you all next time.